Hey everyone, welcome to another awesome episode of the Brave Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Jena Rodriguez, and I'm your brand, business, and brave strategist, helping you to catapult your brand clarity, your profit enhancement, and guys, ultimately, freedom. I want you to be free in your business and your life to choose what you want to do, to be able to make the money you want to make, and ultimately make the impact that you truly want to make. And this is show, I'm so excited. We've got Mark Podolsky is walking on the treadmill. Welcome, Mark. How are you?
Jena, I'm great. Thanks for having me. Look, we talked about this kind of pre-interview, but sitting's the new smoking. And I've been doing this for 4 years, and I feel like I can, I do better walking and talking.
Yeah.
So I'm not going that fast. It's not like I'm sweating, but I love it.
I know. And like we were just talking about it, and he's walking on his treadmill, and I have a stand-up desk. This is like the best thing. And I bought this, I think earlier this year, and I had an IKEA top, right? Like this lacquer white, beautiful top. And I didn't want to lose that. So I went and bought the base only and just screwed it into the top of the desk of my choosing. And now it's completely transformed into a stand-up, and I could throw a treadmill underneath it if I wanted to.
So your feet don't hurt, Jena, from standing?
Ooh, well, you buy a mat. You buy this flex mat underneath, yeah. So I had to learn that too. I had to buy that the next day because I did try doing this desk one day without, and the balls of your feet hurt. So yeah, so there is these like black flex mats that are completely for stand-up desks. So highly recommended. But so this is the way we're going to do the podcast today. So he's walking, I'm standing, and we're ready to rock and roll. So
all right.
Mark, tell everybody who you are and what your business is all about and what you're up to in the world.
Sure. So I'm a professional land investor. I've done over 5,200 land flips since 2001. And, I'm really sort of all in on passive income.
Yeah.
And getting out of what I call solo economic dependency, which means if you're not working, you're not making any money.
Right.
And so like even, high income earners, doctors, lawyers, dentists, if they're not working or billing, they're not generating any income.
Right.
And so as you talked about in the beginning of the podcast, that's not a really freedom. And so,
Correct.
My mission is to sort of be that pebble in the pond and help people create enough passive income where it exceeds their fixed expenses. And then they're working because they want to, not because they have to. And then they kind of, climb up Maslow's hierarchy of needs to self-actualization and really try to figure out what is my purpose in life? What do I really want to do? And how do I really want to spend the days I have on this earth? And that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm so glad we're having this conversation because this like intrigues me. I have not invested in land before. I mean, I've invested in some real estate, but this whole conversation is intriguing, and it's just another way to create this passive conversation, right? And so I'm curious, how did you get into land? I mean, it feels intimidating, obviously, when you're first looking at it, like, I don't know where to start. And I think potentially people think about that about business. They think about real estate. They think about anything that takes an investment or takes new knowledge. So how did you first get into land investing, and what's been happening since then?
So I was a miserable investment banker working mergers and acquisitions for private equity groups. And I had a 45-minute commute to work and back. I was micromanaged. I worked long hours, high pressure, high stress. And it got so bad, Jena, I wouldn't get the Sunday blues anticipating Monday coming.
Yes.
I'd get the Friday blues anticipating the weekend going by really fast and having to be back at work on Monday. So my firm hires this guy, and he tells me as a side hustle, he's going to tax deed auctions, and he's buying up raw land, pennies on the dollar, and he's putting them up online, and he's making on average a 300% return on his investment. So Jena, I'm looking at companies all day long, and a great company has 15% EBITDA margins or free cash flow. Great company. Your average company is at 10%, and I'm looking at companies all day long less than 10% So I don't believe him. So I've got $3,000 saved up for car repairs, and I go to New Mexico with him, and I just do exactly what he says to do. I buy up 10 half-acre parcels for $300 each. The next week, I put them all up online, and they sell for an average of $1,200 each. 300%. Wow. It worked. So I take all that money and I go to a tax deed auction in Arizona. And this is 2000. There's no one in the room. And I'm buying up, lots here and there, acreage for nothing. And over the next 6 months, I sold all that property and I made over $90,000.
Wow.
So I go to my wife. I'm like, honey, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to be a full-time land investor. And she said, absolutely not. So I said, okay. Because she's pregnant at the time. No. I said, fine. So I worked land investing part-time for 18 months until the land investing income exceeded the investment banking income. And then I quit, and I've been doing it full-time ever since.
Wow. Well, so
that's how I got into it.
Yeah, this is good. So, so it sounds like obviously one, find out for yourself. Like, you're like, I don't believe you, but you went and checked it out and followed almost somewhat of a mentor, someone else that had done it before you, which I think is
that helped me sleep better at night, knowing that and I also kind of went through worst case scenario with my wife. I said, look, let's assume that I can't sell it, right?
Yeah.
What's the worst case scenario? And I'm like, we own an asset, and we could barter it. We could give it to our kids one day. It's an asset that you can't destroy. I don't have to maintain it. The taxes were like $9 a year on it, so I could afford the taxes on it. And so we kind of walked through this, like, well, what's really the worst thing that could happen? I'm like, and if it all went to hell, we could even live on this stuff. So she's like, okay,
you could pop a tent.
Fine. Yeah. She's like, but please sell it. So I'm like, okay. But what I learned was that the market for raw land is massive. And there's a lust for land in this country that most people don't realize. And so I've never been stuck with a piece of land that I couldn't sell.
That's amazing. That's really good to hear, because I think, even in real estate, there's times where you get kind of stuck or, can't move it as fast or anything. Do you experience any of that with the land as well? Or you feel like there really is a turnover?
Well, the way that I do it is I make it irresistible. So if you want, I can kind of walk you through the model.
I'd love to. Yeah. I'm highly curious. So let's just go through it really quick.
Okay. So Jena, where do you live?
I'm in Texas.
You're in Texas. Okay. Yeah. And
Houston area.
Houston area. So, wow. Are you okay?
Yes, I'm okay.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay. We were close to damage, but nothing here in this neighborhood. So knock on wood.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
good.
Thank you.
So anyways, I go to the tax delinquent list.
Yes.
In, let's say California, right? And all of a sudden I see, oh my gosh, Jena Rodriguez, $200 in back taxes. And she lives in Houston, Texas. So that tells me two things. Number one, you have no emotional attachment to this raw land in California. And number two
right.
is that you're distressed in some way, because when we don't value something, we don't pay for it. The fact that you owe back taxes and you've been getting these notices tells me there's something up. So what I do is I look at the comparable sales for the last, let's say, 12 to 18 months. And all I'll do is divide by 4. Okay. And what that gives me is what Warren Buffett would call a 300% margin of safety.
Yeah.
And then I would send you
safety.
Right. So let's say that property's comps were 10,000. I would pay no more than $2,500 for that property. Now, 3 to 5% of people will accept my quote unquote top dollar offer. Right. So for every 100 offers, I'll get 3 to 5 deals. Then I'll go through a series or a checklist of due diligence. Does Jena really own the property? Are there any liens or encumbrances? Are there any breaks in the chain of title? Is there ingress or egress, kind of fancy term for legal access? Is there something compelling about the property? And we'll go through this checklist, and we'll actually outsource our due diligence to the Philippines. And we'll get GIS maps. We'll get the GPS coordinates. We'll get pictures. We'll get video. And this costs about $11, right? Wow. But I'm really, at the same time I'm doing due diligence, I'm creating a marketing package for the next buyer. And what's amazing about my model is I have a built-in best buyer. This is like my hidden secret that we have in this land niche. Do you know who the best buyer is?
Tell me.
The neighbors. The neighbors.
Yeah, they're
right?
interested in more land right next door. Yeah.
Exactly. So we send them a neighbor letter saying, hey, before I go to the open market, here's your chance to increase your land holdings, protect your view, protect your privacy, or just know who your neighbors are going to be. Maybe you don't want a stranger living next to you or even owning land next to you. Have your third cousin buy it, whatever it is. So oftentimes the neighbors will take us up on that deal. But if they do pass, we'll go to our buyers list. If the buyers list passes, we'll go to a little website you've probably never heard of called Craigslist.
Yeah.
Right? So, so the cost, my marketing costs are very low. And then we'll also go to Facebook, buy, sell groups. So I will sell that property in 30 days or less. And the way that I'll do it is I'll get my money out on the down payment or within 6 months of the down payment. So $2,500 down, and then we'll just make it a car payment. Let's say $449 a month at 9% interest over 10 years. So for the next 10 years, I'm going to get $449 at 9%.
Every month.
Every month for the next 10 years. And then I use a program called geekpay.io, which automates it. So 90% of the business now is automated. So I'm kind of doing that whole E-Myth thing where I'm working on the business and not in the business.
Yeah.
And so with systems, automation, and software, it's a one-time sale. I get recurring income every single month without renters, rehabs, renovations, or rodents. And because I'm not dealing with a renter, I'm exempt from the SAFE Act, Dodd-Frank, and RESPA. And there's no competition. So if you go to a real estate investment meeting in Houston, 100 people in the room, 99 of them are going to be house flippers and wholesalers, drinking the HGTV DIY juice. And you and I, Jenna, would be the only land people. So it's this massive market and no competition.
Wow. I love it. I'm like so glad you're here. I'm like really curious about this. This is great. Because I think it's one of those unknowns. It's one of those like less glamorous and sensationalized, things. I mean, I'm a diehard HGTV watcher too, but it's funny. And I'm just now trying to decide how I'm going to remodel my bathroom. And it's like, oh, what a chore, right?
Right.
And I'm not looking to get an investment from it, or a return on investment immediately, but eventually. And, and it's just such a process. So this sounds, fairly easy. And obviously, I would gather there's some hiccups that you've hit along the road. So what's been some of the biggest hiccups that you've experienced in your growth or your business or the whole, just even the model or what have you?
Right. So 2001 to 2008, right?
Yeah.
We all know what happened. Like I like a monkey could have made a lot of money in real estate. And I was that dumb monkey, right?
Got it.
And so I'm making all this money and, Jenna, Parkinson's law of money. So the more money I made, was my house good enough? No. Had to buy a bigger house. Right?
Right.
Were the cars that were running just fine good enough? No. I had to buy luxury cars.
Right.
I've got 3 kids. Was public school good enough for them? No. Private school. Right? And then, Tuesday night, we're hungry. Let's bring in Mastros for dinner. And oh, by the way, let's have a nanny for 5 days a week and a housekeeper 5 days a week to maintain this huge house. So I was literally living out of control. What I found was what I thought would make me happy and what, we're kind of marketed to, what's going to make you happy in life and this whole version of success really made me unhappy. So my wife and I were fighting. I thought my kids were spoiled and, it got really, really bad. And then, weirdly and thankfully, the business takes a big hit in 2010 where I lose 40% of my notes. So even though the company was profitable, I took a 50% pay decline and I've got this massive overhead. So we got to get rid of the big house. We get rid of the big cars. We go to public school. And all of a sudden on Saturday night now, instead of going out for dinner, the family and I in our little house, we're playing charades and we're way happier.
Yeah.
But it was a huge, huge hit to the ego. And it was, it was this feeling of, I'm not enough. And so
Right.
once I kind of got to the other side of that no thing out there is ever going to fill that void of not feeling like enough, I was able to kind of figure out, okay, what really is important to me in life, and what are my values, and how do I want to live that way, and how do I want to, mirror that for my children. And so that's been sort of the process of growth going forward, but I had to kind of learn it the hard way.
Yeah.
And it was a very tough pill to swallow, but thankfully we swallowed it. And as we've come back from, the sort of financial ruin, if you will,
Yeah.
we're living our values now. So I've worked 3 days a week, and Mondays and Fridays are what I call my terminal days. So on Monday, if I pretend like, okay, if this is my last day on earth, how do I want to live it? Take the kids to school, have coffee with my wife, go to lunch with my wife or a buddy, pick up the kids from school, go on a hike, maybe go on a bike ride. I mean, very simple things, but, meditate, work out, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I feel like at the end of that day, I've deepened my relationships with the people that I care about. And then I feel like, okay, if I don't make it the next day, I'll die in peace.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's now about meaningful work and meaningful relationships, and not looking like quote unquote success, but actually feeling like I'm successful.
Yeah.
And that's been hard.
Success. Yeah. I love that you shared that. Thank you. Because I think it's important for people to find their own truth about that story, and I'm coughing in between, so I'm sparing all of your ears, but trying to anyway. Getting over bronchitis, but is connecting to what matters. Like, you don't have to hit rock bottom. You don't have, it's like the outside world doesn't have to come crashing in order to get to that place. So it sounds like if anyone listening could just even stop today in this moment and create a list of the things that really do matter, and how can you incorporate those things more into your life, especially if they're kind of, doing what, you and I both, like, we keep kind of growing our externals, right? And sometimes, that alone creates pressure. That alone creates responsibility that maybe isn't necessary. But how can you start to add those value added things back into your life now versus waiting for the bottom to drop? So I think it's brilliant that you shared that, and hopefully you're going to hear it.
And absolutely. And, Kevin Kelly, the guy that he started Wired, and just a really interesting guy. I heard him on a podcast once, and he was saying that the way that he's able to take these big risks in life and start all these companies is that he sort of reverse engineers, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? And he's like, well, the worst thing that can happen is, I guess, I lose all my money. And then he figures, okay, if that happens, I was poor once, and the best time in my life was when I was super poor and I was backpacking through Asia and I was living on rice. He's like, I was super happy. I could do that again. My kids don't need toys. They could play with their boxes and pots and pans, and we could live in Asia. And so I went through the same thing with my wife. I'm like, honey, because I've got a couple other companies that, some startups and other things. And I'm like, well, if it all goes to hell, I know what we're going to do. We're going to go to Newport Beach. We're going to be homeless. We're going to live on the beach. We're going to join a 24/7, fitness center. So we won't smell. We'll stay fit. And we'll go to Fashion Island after the stores close. We'll get some good food. I'm like, it's not going to be so bad. We'll go to the public library. We'll get on the internet. We'll come back from it. And so I'm prepared to be like this, relatively homeless guy, and I can take big risks with that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't want to do that because they're afraid, like, well, if it all goes to hell, I'm going to lose everything. Well, you were at some point you were, probably poor, and you were probably pretty happy.
Yeah. It's like, look back at when you really didn't have all that you might have, or if you've gotten to a level of success and you've added all these things onto your life, it's like, when was it simple for you, whatever that is, and like really try to reconnect to that simplicity of life and not be willing to, not be afraid to go back there. And I think, heck, I was basically homeless in 1999, moving to Houston with a car and carload and a cat. Like, that's it. That's how simple it was. And I showed up and slept on couches. I was couch hopping for months. And, but it's like, and I mean, do I look back and go, was I happy? I was probably more pissed off than, I'm like, why me? And now, interesting enough, I've learned to take 100% responsibility for my choices in my life. And so had I been that situation now, I could just say, I could own for what it is, right? It's like, this is just where I'm at, and it's simple. And so I probably looking back and be like, no, I don't want to do that again. But however, it was simple. It was just simple, and what's the worst that could happen when you just simplify your life, for that matter. So I think that's really good, because I would gather that's how you deal with fear especially when you're facing risks. Right? Tell us a little bit more about fear and how that, operates in your life.
So I'm super anxious, like anxiety. Yeah. Like anxiety disorder, anxious.
Got it.
And because of that, I had a really, really hard time staying present in the moment, because I was, this low level anxiety, and fear, especially after going through what I went through. Right. In 2010. And so I remember one day I'm playing basketball with my kids, and my phone falls out of my pocket, and they start cheering. And I'm like, oh, I got a problem here.
We got problems.
Yeah, right. I got a problem.
Oh, no.
So now I know that when I'm obsessively checking my phone, or I'm obsessively reading the news, I have like these little triggers, right? I feel a little anxious. And instead of feeling anxious, I distract myself with work or social media. Like, oh, maybe I should check out on Facebook posts, right? Or email. And then I'm like, okay, wait. And then I'll be like, okay, I'll say to myself, what problem do I have at this moment? And I'll feel my feet, and I'll just kind of take this deep conscious breath, and I'll get back to the moment. And then but I know, so I know when I'm doing this, I'm really aware of it now. But so for me, that's how I sort of deal with fear. And then I also write, I do like this morning pages exercise. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I just write a few pages in the morning and get my inner curmudgeon out and get all my fears out on paper. And that way it's not like swimming in my head anymore. It's like it's out, and I can start the day. So I'll meditate or I'll write. Yeah, clear the cobwebs. And then I'll do a brain dump before I go to bed, and that way I'm kind of managing it, right? I also do something kind of weird, like Stoic philosophy, where it's going to sound morbid, right? But I do negative visualization for gratitude practice. Negative. Okay. So, Jenna, don't judge, but before I kiss the kids tonight. No. So how many kids do you have? Kids?
Yeah, two.
Okay, so you go and you kiss them goodnight, and you just kind of like, okay, good night. Like, I'm exhausted. Like, go to sleep, right? But what I do is I have this negative visualization that this will be the last time I ever get to kiss them goodnight, and they won't make it through the night. Ouch. I really feel like that. And then, but I'm telling you, when they wake up that next morning, I am so happy to see them. And I am so grateful that they're healthy and happy and hopefully relatively well-adjusted, right? And so I kind of do this thing. They didn't get any of that energy over through the night. Right. And so, sort of negatively visualizing all the things I can lose when I kind of wake up and I do my gratitude journal, I feel so energized and so grateful for all the things I do have. And that really helps deal with the fear of, anything that I'm dealing with. Is like, well, it can't be that bad. Yeah, the kids are okay. The wife hasn't left me yet. And, I'm still walking the treadmill. Still walking the treadmill. So it's got, so life is good, and I'm living this intentional life, and I'm very grateful for it. Yeah. So a little reverse psychology, I suppose, on yourself, right? Yeah. Right. But I think I absolutely get the point, but it is just really reframing either in a positive light or, I think there's a fine line probably between worrying that it's really going to happen or just imagining like,
they could be gone tomorrow. Like, you know, be grateful for what you have right now.
Right.
But
So how do you deal with fear?
how do I deal with fear? So first of all, I acknowledge it, like, and for what it is, called not real. Like, I acknowledge it. I look at it, and I try to create more an observer for myself, meaning instead of being in the emotional part of the fear, then take myself out of it and go, well, what is this all about? What am I afraid of? What is the worst case scenario? What am I overwhelmed by? And then I break it down. Basically, if I'm afraid of, I remember being afraid of speaking. Like, I did not speak. And even doing videos like this, I've had to grow into it. This is not my nature. And back in 2013, I avoided it like the plague. I'm like, I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to speak. And 2013 was the first year I really decided that my fear of whatever they're going to think about me, or whatever stops me from getting on that stage or in front of people, is got to stop. Because number one, I know it can change the impact I can make. I know it can change my business. I know it's only going to grow me and make me stronger and all of those things. So I really broke down the fear into not only what is real about it, like nothing's real about it. I'm making it up. And what's really on the other side of it, like what's actually possible, so that I can focus my energy on that. And it's like, once I started speaking, number one, I just kept doing it until I got comfortable, just like kept going. And I started getting feedback, positive feedback. And if everybody hated it, nobody told me. So that's a good thing. But even just that fear alone, because I know a lot of people deal with public speaking fear, it's just like, what's really the reason you're speaking? And I got over the fear about me, because I kept making it about me. And then I got into, it's really about serving somebody. It's about changing one person's life if I just speak up. And so I reframed it. And so that's how I deal with fear. And of course, if I'm standing in front of a truck and I know it's coming, and I get out of the way. But it's the same thing with the fake fear that we give ourselves every single day, in my opinion, is that, what is the worst could happen when you make the sales call? What is the worst could happen if you lose the deal, or have a piece of land and, you don't ever sell it, and you go in the hole with it. I mean, I've gone through bankruptcy and $700,000 in debt. Talk about, I spent 20 plus 30 years being afraid of a bankruptcy. Like, because I watched my mother go through it at 8 years old. And so I associated bankruptcy with failure, divorce, like it all happened at once. Foreclosure, lost the house, moved out of a 5-bedroom into an apartment. Like, I just saw my world flip. And so my 8-year-old self associated that with like all these bad things. And so I'm like, that's bad. I can never do that. That's bad. I can never have one. And sure enough, first business, there I am, bankruptcy attorney. And it's been the best thing that's happened. I mean, meaning I just picked up the next day and kept moving. And the moment I saw I was going to have to file, I started laughing to myself, because that's the moment I said, yep, that's what fear will do to you, right? It'll bring it right to you. And then you're faced with the fear. And it's like, what's really real about this? Nothing. I'm not dying. I'm not out of here. It's not over. My life isn't ending. And my marriage is still intact. I'm not losing my house, so that's my fear approach, is like, really, it's like, honor that it's there. Don't try to shove it, because it could then internally be panic attacks or, something physical, right? Anxiety.
Right.
So don't internalize it, but bring it outside of you and go, what's really happening? And that's how I do it.
I love it. Don't you feel like you have like this sort of resilience now?
Yeah.
That it doesn't, like, no matter what happens externally, like, you're going to be just fine. Like, the worst has kind of happened and you've survived and thrived.
Right.
And I think for a lot of people, you don't have to go through a dramatic crisis like what we went through. Like, you can listen to this podcast and shortcut it and be like, you know what, maybe I should just go for it. Like,
yeah, just do it.
Just do it. And what's interesting is when you're telling your story, it reminded me of this Tony Robbins quote, which is, suffering is an excessive focus on yourself.
Amen.
And as soon as you started thinking about all the value you were going to create in the world, you were able to sort of like, well, it's not about Jena anymore and her fear. It's about helping this person that I know I can help.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I love Tony Robbins and what he speaks. And it's the same thing with this podcast. I mean, it's like, this was a new territory for me 2.5 years ago or however long it's been. And it's just like, just do it anyway. Be willing to be uncomfortable about it. And I think that's what brave is. So, just listening to your brave moments and, even tapping into an industry, you're like, that ain't real. Like, how is that even possible? Right. And the guy's like, no, come with me. Like, check out this land, these auctions or whatever. So you took your brave and you stepped into it. And so I'm curious now, you obviously have done the work. You're continuing to do the personal development work every morning and every night. And, but what is the next brave thing that you're facing? Like, what's on the horizon that you've got to really say yes to?
So I'm trying to get traction in the marketplace with my SaaS startup, geekpay.io. And then I'm writing a book. And in the book is this weird sort of mental, or like this, like it's sort of like a calisthenics of bravery, if you will, right? Because once it's done, it's done. Yeah. And it's like, there's no editing it. Like, I remember like my first few YouTube videos, they were so cringeworthy. I thought, well, I can just delete them, right? Like, not so bad. Right. Or, if my podcasts are horrible and nobody listens to them, like, I could just delete them. But once you put a book out into the world, there's no deleting it. There's no going back and editing it. It's sitting on the shelf. It's there. And so I kind of deal with that fear. Like, is this going to be any good? Is anyone going to, and then I'm like, look, it's not about me. I'm going to write this for my kids, right? One day the kids will read it and they'll be like, oh, Dad wrote a book. And hopefully, so that helps me kind of get over that fear and not think about sort of anyone else. And look, and the thing is, like, what can I really control, right? All I can do is my best and tell myself the story that my best is good enough, and that's all I can control. And if people like it or hate it, I have no control over that.
Yeah,
I can do my best, and that's it. And hopefully the kids will appreciate it.
Hopefully they'll buy a couple.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is, like, financially, I have no control of it. If I lose money, make money, doesn't matter. Yeah. It's just, I think that, like you, with speaking, I have something that I want to share that I think is valuable and could possibly move the needle in someone's life. And why not? Like, why not me? Why not you?
Yeah, exactly. Why not? I mean, I think that might be the ending point of this whole conversation is just ask, those listening to ask themselves, why not me? And, and is this your first book?
This will be the second book. The first one is still in editing.
Oh, okay,
so I kind of, but that one's kind of more about like buying and selling your own land. This other one's sort of a thought leadership book.
Yeah.
And so that one's
a little more personal.
Really personal. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm almost done with my second book. And even I remember writing the first one and it was like, I've always wanted to be an author, but how do I do this? And I don't know how to do it. Hows get you in trouble if you just don't start moving, right? Because they'll stall you out if you can't figure it all out. But I had a lot of support around me that says, you can do it. You just break it down, write a chapter at a time, all that. But it was more of a tool. It was more of a business tool. Like, this is just the stuff I teach. And this next book is the next iteration of, my system and things like that. But my point here is that third book that I have on the horizon is The Brave Effect. And it's that thought leadership. It's like getting personal, telling your story, articulating your journey. And, and at least for me, that's what my intention is to get really under the hood of what's happened in my life, and I think that's where we have to really just trust that one word, one quote, one line could may be the complete catalyst for shifting somebody's life. And if that's all that one person needed to hear, then wouldn't that make the book worth it? And it's like, so if, like you said, just like the speaking, it's like, take it off of yourself and really focus on the value that you're providing. And I think that's, I don't know if I read that in your bio or where it was, but just adding value, like focus on adding value, versus like what's in it for you, like for, ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I support you. Get your book done.
All right. I'm
You
working
can
on
do
it.
this. Yeah,
Thank
right.
you.
And maybe we'll have you back when it's all over and we can talk about the book or whatever. But you know, it's the next brave thing, and I say brave daily. So if that's your next brave, then you know, take one daily step towards it, and it'll be done in no time, for that matter. And I'm certainly happy for you and your whatever next venture that you just mentioned. You know, your next company idea.
Thank you.
So
Thank
yeah,
you.
so you can rock it out. But thank you so much for being here, Mark. I know we kind of talked a little longer than normal, and I just really appreciated this kind of dialogue and this conversation, and you know, and for people listening. So, final question before we share with everyone how to connect with you. I'd like to know if this was your last podcast, last interview, last conversation, and you had to leave people with one thought. It's kind of like if you don't wake up tomorrow, right? Like you think about, what would you like to say to people listening?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. Jena Rodriguez.
No, knock it down.
You know what's so funny about that question? I love that question. Is that I ask a similar question to people about food. If you're on death row, what would you want as your last meal? And because I love food, but I think and I usually am kind of prepared for this quote. One of my favorite quotes.
I completely winged it.
And it's like this Zig Ziglar quote: "If you'll do for the next 3 to 5 years what other people won't do, you'll be able to do for the rest of your life what other people can't do." Yeah. But is that really gonna be my last?
That might be your last
before I die. Is quoting Zig Ziglar? That feels horrible. How about
a Mark quote? Give me a Mark.
How about a Mark quote? All right. So before I die, I think it would be live an intentional life, whatever that means for you. Just live intentionally.
That's what you would tell your kids, right?
That's what I would tell my kids.
Yeah.
And you know, and go for it, and be happy.
Yeah, love it. Good enough. Simple is good.
Simple is good. All right, now I can die in peace. Thank you.
Now you can be done. You get off the treadmill there. But so final thought is, where can people connect with you? Because I think, you know, they've got to connect with you and touch base, and maybe your model is right up their alley to get some passive income coming in. So what's that website? Yeah,
so it's thelandgeek.com. Thelandgeek.com. And Jena, if they email support@thelandgeek.com, we'll send them for free our passive income launch kit, which we normally sell for $97. We'll give them for free. Just put in the subject line Jena or Brave or I'm Brave.
Brave with Jena.
Brave with Jena, or
Perfect.
Jenna's book is better than your book. Whatever you want to put on the subject line, just so I know you came from the podcast. Awesome. And we'll send you for free the $97 passive income launch kit.
Well, cool. I might check it out myself.
There you go.
Name in there. That's awesome. Thank you for your generosity. I think that's great, and just a way for people to really connect with what you're up to and how you help people. So thank you for being here. This is great. Glad we could walk and stand together and just get to know each other and to hear your story. So it's been really powerful. One of the best.
Thanks, Jena.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And everyone listening, as I always remind you as we close out, and not only what Mark said, I love, the conversation about being intentional. And with that, make sure that you get your Brave on intentionally every single day. So let's go get our Brave on. Talk to you next time.